Genesis tells us Adam and Eve were humanity's beginning. It tells us their son Cain became the world's first murderer. But here's what it doesn't tell us. When Cain was exiled to the wilderness, he found a wife. The Bible states it plainly. Cain lay with his wife, and she became pregnant. But hold on. Where did she come from? If Adam and Eve were the only humans, if Abel was dead, then who was this woman in the wasteland? Did other people exist beyond Eden's borders? Or did the ancient texts contain knowledge that's been buried, lost to time, waiting to be rediscovered? We're about to explore one of Scripture's deepest mysteries, the woman who married history as first exile, the woman whose name was stolen from the story. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Now let's journey beyond the garden and discover what was hidden. When paradise was lost, Eden fell into silence. The flaming sword turned at the gate, and Adam and Eve stumbled into an unfamiliar world. The ground beneath them was harsh and unforgiving. Gone were the days when trees bore fruit at a thought. Now every morsel required sweat. Every harvest demanded blood and tears. But life, stubborn as it is, pressed forward. Eve gave birth to 2 boys, Cain and Abel. Cain, the eldest, worked the cursed soil. His skin was weathered, his muscles worn from endless toil. Abel kept the sheep, moving quietly through the meadows where grasses bent in the evening breeze. The day came when both brothers presented offerings before God. Abel selected the finest of his lambs, perfect and without flaw. Cain gathered produce from his fields, the labor of his scarred hands. Heaven received Abel's gift with favor. The flames rose high and pure. But Cain's offering? It lay cold and rejected, the smoke never reaching the sky. Something dark awakened in the firstborn's chest. Scripture says it simply. Sin was waiting at his door. And then, in a field where no one could see, where only the wind moved through the grain, Cain murdered his brother. Earth drank human blood for the first time. The first grave was carved by trembling hands. One act of rage fractured humanity forever. God's voice thundered through the silence. What have you done? Your brother's blood screams to me from the dirt. The curse fell swift and terrible. You will wander the earth, never finding rest, never finding home. Cain's cry pierced the air. This punishment will crush me. Yet even then, mercy appeared. God marked Cain's forehead, a sign protecting him from death by anyone who found him. So Cain fled eastward from Eden, into a region called Nod, the place of wandering. And there, tucked into the narrative like a whisper, comes the line that changes everything. Cain knew his wife, and she bore him a son, Enoch. Wait, his wife? From where? Eve was the only woman named so far. Abel was gone. Adam and Eve were supposedly the beginning of all humanity. So who was this woman in the wilderness? Was she created separately? Or does Scripture hide something crucial, something the ancient world understood but we've forgotten? The question has haunted every generation. From scholars to skeptics, from temples to lecture halls, the mystery remains. If Adam and Eve were the first, who did Cain marry? Genesis rushes past the question. It leaps from exile to childbirth, without pausing to explain the woman at the center of it all. For thousands of years, that gap has sparked endless debate. But what if the answer isn't in Genesis? What if it lives in the texts that were removed, the scrolls that didn't make the final cut? Hidden among ancient manuscripts, preserved by faithful hands, and discovered in desert caves, lies a book called Jubilees. The Ethiopian church kept it sacred. Fragments appeared among the Dead Sea Scrolls. And this book tells the early story of humanity with stunning clarity. It names the woman Genesis left out. In the first Jubilee, it reads, Cain took his sister Awan as his wife, and she bore him Enoch. Awan, a name swallowed by history. Cain's sister. Adam and Eve's daughter. Jubilees goes further. It explains that Adam and Eve had many children beyond Cain, Abel, and Seth, sons and daughters who went unnamed in Genesis, but were essential for humanity's survival. The Jewish historian Josephus confirms this, writing that Adam had numerous offspring and that the world grew from their unions. So Awan wasn't a stranger from some parallel creation. She was among the first generation of humans, one of Eden's original children. In those earliest days, the human bloodline was undiluted. Marriages between siblings were not forbidden but necessary. Like the first seeds that multiply from themselves, humanity had to begin somewhere. To the ancient mind, this wasn't shameful. It was obedience to the divine command, "Be fruitful and multiply." Jubilees even details how Adam and Eve's children married in order. Cain wed Awan. Later, Seth married their sister Azorah. From these unions, humanity expanded outward, generation by generation, all carrying the weight of exile from paradise. But one mystery lingers. Why was Awan erased? Why does the Bible remain silent about her? Some say it was never truly forgotten, just buried. Later scribes focused their records on Seth's lineage, because that's where the story led, to Noah, to Abraham, to the coming Messiah. Others suggest her removal was deliberate, an attempt to separate the holy line from Cain's shadow. Yet Jubilees remembers. In its ancient pages, Awan still exists. The woman who followed her brother into exile. The mother of the first child born beyond paradise's walls. Forgotten by most, but remembered by the oldest voices. Her name is Awan, and her story is just beginning. Time devours names. Cities crumble to sand. The stories of women the first mothers, the world builders, fade into the background of history. Once, Awan's name was spoken around campfires. Her story passed from generation to generation in the tents of early tribes. But somewhere along the timeline, her name disappeared from the official record, removed from the pages most people read. Why? Why would her memory vanish when she was the first woman to give birth outside the garden, the mother of a new era? Some believe it was accidental, lost in endless copying, translation, and retelling across centuries. But others suggest it was intentional. When ancient scribes assembled the holy texts, they had one focus, the sacred bloodline, the thread connecting Adam to Noah, Noah to Abraham, Abraham to the promised Messiah. Cain's descendants, however, carried something darker, the stain of murder, the mark of exile, the echo of blood spilled in anger. To protect the purity of the Messiah's ancestry, perhaps the writers chose silence. They recorded Cain's name, but not Awan's. They mentioned his son Enoch, but not the woman who carried him. Later cultures found the idea uncomfortable. By the time Moses received the law, marriages between siblings were forbidden. Speaking of such unions meant speaking of a world before rules, before boundaries, before nations rose and fell. So perhaps, out of reverence or caution, scribes let her name slip quietly into the margins. Centuries passed. What was once known became legend. Awan became simply Cain's wife, the unnamed mother of a city, invisible in the very story she created. The irony cuts deep. The woman who birthed the first child of civilization was forgotten by that civilization. Yet her legacy refuses to die. The city her husband built, the city of Enoch, became the first spark of human culture, the first sign that humanity would rise from Eden's ashes. She wasn't truly nameless. She had a voice, a name, and it still echoes in the lost pages of ancient memory. Awan, daughter of Eve, sister of Cain, mother of Enoch, the bridge between paradise and everything that came after. Her name may have been stripped from the written word, but it lives on, carved into the foundation of humanity's second beginning. The wilderness east of Eden was nothing like their parents' home. The dirt was stubborn. The sun showed no mercy. Yet even there, in exile's shadow, life took root again. Cain and Awan made shelter in the wasteland. They learned to stack stones, harness fire, build walls against the howling wind. And there, in that barren place, their son was born, Enoch, the first child of the new world. Scripture tells us Cain named the city after him, the first city ever recorded. Picture it, crude dwellings clustered together, firelight flickering against the darkness, the ring of metal on stone, voices calling across the valley of Nod. Civilization wasn't born from paradise. It was forged in punishment. Through Awan, Cain's bloodline multiplied. Their descendants became builders, artists, metalworkers, musicians. Genesis names them Jabal, father of those who live in tents and raise livestock. Jubal, father of all who play stringed instruments and pipes. Tubal-Cain, master of bronze and iron forging. From Cain's cursed family came the birth of innovation, creativity, and industry. The exiles became architects. The wanderers became world makers. It's one of Scripture's greatest ironies. Even under judgment, God allowed beauty to flourish. From soil stained with Abel's blood came instruments of art and progress. From the condemned came the creators. And at the center of it all stood a woman whose name was buried. Awan, mother of the first city, mother of invention, mother of resilience. As generations multiplied, Cain's descendants grew ambitious, building higher, reaching further. Meanwhile, Adam and Eve bore another son, Seth, through whom the sacred line would continue. The world now split in two: Cain's children, who built the earth, and Seth's children, who kept the faith. But none of it could have happened without that union in the land of Nod, without the woman who walked beside the marked man, without her bearing the child who built the first city. Awan, mother of a new world. Her story isn't about sin. It's about survival. Not rebellion, but rebirth. Through her, humanity began again outside the garden's gates. In exile, a new chapter opened. A chapter that would eventually forget her name, but could never erase her impact. The mystery of Cain's wife is more than historical curiosity. It's a reflection of how easily truth disappears when voices are silenced. Awan's story was never meant to be lost. She represents the hidden dimensions of Scripture, the quiet spaces where God still speaks to those willing to listen closely. Through her, we witness God's mercy in action. Though Cain was cursed, he wasn't obliterated. Though he wandered, he wasn't forgotten. In the wilderness, God allowed new life, proof that redemption can emerge even from judgment. Awan became the connection between Eden and what followed, the mother of creation after the fall. Her name might be absent from most Bibles, but her legacy flows through every generation that came after. She was the first mother of the East, the silent witness of humanity's second beginning. She reminds us that what seems erased can endure, that even when the world forgets, heaven remembers. The mystery of Cain's wife isn't just about her origin. It's about what she symbolizes: hope after punishment, life after death, grace after exile. So next time you read Genesis and encounter that simple verse, Cain knew his wife, and she bore Enoch, remember her. Remember the woman whose name was lost, but whose story breathes through the ages. Because sometimes the Bible's greatest mysteries aren't in what was written, but in what was left unspoken. If this opened your eyes to something new, smash that like button, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs to see it.